Hello and welcome back to Narrated. This, The Chronicles of Prydain, Book 5, The High King, by Lloyd Alexander, Chapter 19, The Death Lord. The Gwythaint, greater than any Terran had ever seen, screamed and beat its wings, churning a wind like a gale of death. Terran saw the curved, gaping beak and blood-red eyes, and in another instant the Gwythaint's talons sank into his shoulders, seeking to grip the flesh beneath his cloak. The relentless bird pressed so closely that the reek of its feathers filled Terran's nostrils. Its head, deeply scarred by an old wound, thrust against him. Terran turned his face away and waited for the beak to rend his throat. Yet the Gwythaint did not strike. Instead, it was pulling him from the rocks with a strength Terran could not resist. The Gwythaint no longer screamed, but made soft, keening sounds, and the bird's eyes fixed upon him not in fury, but in a strange gaze of recognition. The bird seemed to be urging him to loosen his grasp. A sudden memory from his boyhood flooded Terran, and again he saw a fledgling Gwythaint in a thorn bush, a young bird wounded and dying. Was this the ragged bundle of feathers he had nursed back to life? Had the creature come at last to pay a debt so long remembered? Terran dared not hope, yet as he clung, weakening, to the side of Mount Dragon, it was his only hope. He relaxed his grip and let himself fall free. The weight of its burden made the Gwythaint falter and drop earthward for a moment. Below Terran, the crags reeled. With all its strength, the huge bird beat its wings, and Terran felt himself borne upward, higher and higher, as the wind whistled in his ears. Its black wings heaving and straining, the Gwythaint pressed steadily aloft until at last its talons opened and Terran fell to the stone-crested peak of Mount Dragon. Akron had spoken the truth. The short, downward slope lay before him, clear and unhindered to the iron portals, which now swung open as the hastening army of Cauldron-born streamed into Anuvan. The deathless host had drawn their swords. Within the stronghold, Gwydion's warriors had seen the foe, and shouts of despair rose from the embattled sons of Dawn. A troop of Cauldron-born, sighting the lone figure of Terran atop the mountain's summit, and the companions who had now crossed the ridge, broke from the main body of the host and turned their attack upon Mount Dragon. Brandishing their weapons, they sped up the slope. The Gwythaint, circling overhead, screamed a war cry. Sweeping its wings, the giant bird flew straight to the onrushing warriors and plunged into their ranks, striking out with beak and claws. Under the violence of the Gwythaint's unexpected charge, the first rank of Cauldron-born fell back and stumbled to the ground, but one of the mute warriors lashed out with his sword, striking again and again until the Gwythaint dropped at his feet. The huge wings fluttered and trembled, then the battered body lay still. 3 of the Cauldron-born had leapt past their comrades and raced toward Terran, who read his own death in their livid faces. His eyes darted about the summit, vainly seeking a last means of defence. At the highest peak of the dragon's crest rose a tall rock. Time and tempest had gnawed it into a grotesque shape. The wind, blowing through the eroded crannies and hollows, set up a baleful keening, and the stone shrieked and moaned as if with a human tongue. The weird wail seemed only to command, to beseech, to draw Terran closer. Here was his only weapon. He flung himself against the rock and wrestled against the unyielding bulk, struggling to uproot it. The Cauldron-born were nearly upon him. The stone crest seemed to move a little as Terran redoubled his efforts. Then suddenly it rolled from its socket. With a final heave, Terran sent it crashing amid his assailants. 2 of the Cauldron-born tumbled backward, and their blades spun from their hands, but the 3rd warrior did not falter in his upward climb. Driven by despair, as a man casts pebbles at the lightning that would strike him down, Terran groped for a handful of stones, of loose earth, even a broken twig, to fling in defiance of the Cauldron warrior, who strode closer, blade upraised. The socket from which the dragon's crest had been torn was lined with flat stones, and in it, as in a narrow grave, lay Dernwyn, the black sword. Terran snatched it up. For an instant, his mind reeling, he did not recognize the blade. Once long before, he had sought to draw Dernwyn, and his life had been almost forfeit to his rashness. Now, Heedless of the cost, seeing no more than a weapon come to his aid, he ripped the sword from its sheath. Dernwyn flamed with a white and blinding light. It was only then, in some distant corner of his mind, Taran dimly understood that Dernwyn was blazing in his grasp and that he was still alive. Dazzled, the Cauldron-born dropped his sword and flung his hands to his face. Taran leapt forward and with all his strength drove the blazing weapon deep into the warrior's heart. The Cauldron-born stumbled and fell, and from his lips, long mute, burst a shriek that echoed and re-echoed from the Death Lord's stronghold, as though rising from 1,000 tongues. Taran staggered back. The Cauldron-born lay motionless. Along the path and at the iron portals, the Cauldron warriors toppled as one body. Within the stronghold, the deathless men locked in combat with the Sons of Dawn screamed and crumpled to earth, even as Taran's foe had fallen. A troop, hastening to fill the breach at Dark Gate, pitched headlong at the feet of Gwydion's warriors, and those who strove to slay the soldiers at the western wall dropped in mid-stride, and their weapons clattered on the stones. Death, at last, had overcome the deathless Cauldron-born. Shouting for the companions, Taran raced from the peak of Mount Dragon. The Comet horsemen leapt to their saddles and urged their steeds at a gallop, plunging after Taran and into the fray. Taran sped across the courtyard. At the death of the Cauldron-born, many of Aron's mortal guards threw down their weapons and sought vainly to flee the stronghold. Others fought with the frenzy of men whose lives were already lost, and the remaining huntsmen, who had gained new strength as their comrades fell under the blades of the Sons of Dawn, still shouted their war cry and flung themselves against Gwydion's warriors. One of the huntsman troop captains, his branded face twisted in rage, slashed at Taran, then shouted in horror and fled at the sight of the flaming sword. Taran fought his way through the press of warriors that swirled about him and raced toward the great hall where he had first glimpsed Gwydion. He burst through the portals, and as he did so, sudden fear and loathing plucked at him. Torches flared along the dark, glittering corridors. For a moment he faltered, as though a black wave had engulfed him. From the far end of the corridor, Gwydion had seen him, and he strode quickly to Taran's side. Taran ran to meet him, shouting triumphantly that Dernwyn had been found. "Sheathe the blade," Gwydion cried, shielding his eyes with a hand. "Sheathe the blade, or it will cost your life." Taran obeyed. Gwydion's face was drawn and pale, his green-flecked eyes burned feverishly. "How have you drawn this blade, pig-keeper?" Gwydion demanded. "My hands alone dare touch it. Give me the sword." The voice of Gwydion rang harsh and commanding, yet Taran hesitated, his heart pounding with a strange dread. "Quickly," Gwydion ordered. "Will you destroy what I have fought to win? Aron's treasure trove lies open to our hands, and power greater than any man has dreamed awaits us. You will share with me in it, pig-keeper. I trust no other." "Shall some base-born warrior keep these treasures from us?" Gwydion cried. "Aron has fled his realm, Prydain is slain, and his army scattered. None has strength to stand against us now. Give me the sword, pig-keeper. Half a kingdom is in your grasp. Seize it now, before it is too late." Gwydion reached out his hand. Taran flung himself back, his eyes wide with horror. "Lord Gwydion, this is not the counsel of a friend. It is betrayal." Only then, as he stared bewildered at the man he had honoured since boyhood, did he understand the ruse. In another instant, Taran ripped Dernwyn from its sheath and raised the glittering blade. "Aron!" Taran gasped, and swung the weapon downward. Before the blade struck home, the Death Lord's disguised shape blurred suddenly and vanished. A shadow writhed along the corridor and faded away. The companions now pressed into the great hall, and Taran hurried toward them, crying the warning that Aron still lived and had escaped. Akron's eyes blazed with hatred. "Escaped you, pig-keeper, but not my vengeance. The secret chambers of Aron are no secret to me. I shall seek him out wherever he has taken refuge." Without waiting for the companions, who ran to follow her, Akron set off with all speed down the winding halls. She sprang past a heavy portal which bore the Death Lord's seal, branded deeply in the iron-studded wood. At the far end of the long chamber, Taran glimpsed a hunched, spidery figure scuttling to a high skull-shaped throne. It was Mag, The chief steward's face was ghastly white, his lips trembled and slavered, and his eyes rolled in his head. He stumbled to the foot of the throne, snatched at an object that lay on the flagstones, clutched it to him, and whirled to face the companions. "No closer!" shrieked Mag, in such a tone that even Akron halted, and Taran, about to draw Dernwyn from its scabbard, was gripped in horror at Mag's contorted features. "Will you keep your lives?" Mag cried. "To your knees, then! Humble yourselves and beg mercy. I, Mag, shall favour you by making you my slaves." "Your master has abandoned you," replied Taran, "and your own treachery has ended." He strode forward. Mag's spidery hands thrust out in warning, and Taran saw that the chief steward held a strangely wrought crown. "I am master here," Mag shouted. "I, Mag, Lord of Anuvin, Aron pledged that I should wear the iron crown. Has it slipped from his fingers? It is mine, mine by right and promise." "He has gone mad," Taran murmured to Fluda, who stared in revulsion as the chief steward raised high the crown and gibbered to himself. "Help me take him prisoner." "No prisoner shall he be," cried Akron, drawing a dagger from her cloak. "His life is mine for the taking, and he shall die as all who have betrayed me. My vengeance begins here, with the treacherous slave, and next his master." "Harm him not," commanded Taran, as the queen struggled to make her way past him to the throne. "Let him find justice from Gwydion." Akron fought against him, but Eilonwy and Doli hastened to hold the raging queen's arms. Taran and the bard strode toward Mag, who flung himself to the seat of the throne. "Do you tell me Aron's promises are lies?" the chief steward hissed, fondling and fingering the heavy crown. "It was promised I should wear this. Now it is given into my hands. So shall it be." Quickly, Mag lifted the crown and set it upon his brow. "Mag!" he shouted. "Mag the Magnificent! Mag the Death Lord!" The chief steward's triumphant laughter turned to a shriek as he clawed suddenly at the iron band circling his forehead. Taran and Fluda gasped and drew back. The crown glowed like red iron in a forge. Writhing in agony, Mag clutched vainly at the burning metal, which now had turned white-hot, and with a last scream toppled from the throne. Eilonwy cried out and turned her face away. Gurgi and Glue had lost track of the companions, and were now pelting through the maze of winding corridors, trying vainly to find them. Gurgi was terrified at being in the heart of Anuvin, and at every step shouted Taran's name. Only the echoes from the torchlit halls came back to him. Glue was no less fearful. Between gasps, the former giant also found enough breath to complain bitterly. "It's too much to bear," he cried. "Too much! Is there no end to the wretched burdens put upon me? Thrown aboard a ship, hustled off to Caer Dalbin, half frozen to death, dragged through the mountains at the risk of my life, a fortune snatched from my hands, and now this. Oh, when I was a giant, I'd not have stood for such high-handed treatment." "Oh, giant, leave off pinings and whinings," replied Gurgi, miserable enough at being separated from the companions. "Gurgi is lost and lorn, but he tries to find kindly master with seekings. Do not fear," he added reassuringly, though it was all he could do to keep his voice from trembling. "Bold Gurgi will keep plaintful little giants safe, oh yes." "You're not doing very well at it," snapped Glue. Nevertheless, the pudgy little man clung to the side of the shaggy creature, and, his stubby legs pumping, matched him stride for stride. They had come to the end of one corridor, where a squat and heavy iron portal stood open. Gurgi fearfully halted. A bright, cold light poured from the chamber. Gurgi took a few cautious paces and peered within. Beyond the doorway stretched what seemed to be an endless tunnel. The light came from heaps of precious stones and golden ornaments. Farther on, he glimpsed strange objects, half hidden by shadows. Gurgi drew back, his eyes popping in wonder and terror. "Oh, it is the treasure house of evil Deathlord," he whispered. "Oh, glimmerings and shimmerings! This is a very secret place, and fearsome, and not wise for bold Gurgi to stay." Glue, however, pressed forward and at the sight of the gems his pale cheeks twitched and his eyes glittered. "Treasure indeed," he said, choking in his excitement. "I've been cheated of one fortune, but now I'll be repaid. It's mine," he cried, "all of it. I spoke first. No one shall deprive me of it." "No, no," protested Gurgi. "It cannot be yours, greedy giant. It is for mighty prince to give or take. Come with hastenings and seek companions even faster. Come with tellings and warnings, for Gurgi also fears snappings and trappings. Costly treasures without guardings? No, no, clever Gurgi sniffs evil enchantments." Heedless of the creature's words, Glue thrust him aside. With an eager cry, the former giant sprang past the threshold and into the tunnel, where he plunged his hands into the largest heap of jewels. Gurgi, seizing him by the collar, tried vainly to drag him back as flames burst from the walls of the treasure trove. Before the great hall of Anuvan, Gwydion rallied the last survivors of the Sons of Dawn and the Comet Horsemen. There the companions, with calls squawking jubilantly overhead, joined them. For a moment, Terran stared searchingly at Gwydion, but his doubts vanished when the tall warrior strode quickly to him and clasped his hand. "We have much to tell each other," Gwydion said, "but no time for the telling. Though Anuvan is in our hands, the Death Lord himself has escaped us. He must be found and slain, if it is in our power to do so." "Gurgi and Glue are lost in the great hall," Terran said. "Give us leave to find them first." "Go quickly then," answered Gwydion. "If the Death Lord is still in Anuvan, their lives are in as much danger as ours." Terran had unbuckled Dernwyn from his belt and held out the sword to Gwydion. "I understand now why Aron sought possession of it, not for his own use, but because he knew it threatened his power. Only Dernwyn could destroy his cauldron-born. Indeed, he dared not even keep it in his stronghold, and believed it harmless, buried atop Mount Dragon. When Aron disguised himself in your shape, he nearly tricked me into giving him the weapon. Take it now. The blade is safer in your hands." Gwydion shook his head. "You have earned the right to draw it, Assistant Pickkeeper," he said, "and thus the right to wear it."
"Indeed so," put in Fluda. "It was magnificent the way you struck down that cauldron-born. A flam couldn't have done better. We are rid of those foul brutes forever."
Terran nodded. "Yet I hate them no longer. It was not their wish to bend in slavery to another's will. Now they are at peace."
"In any case, Henwen's prophecy came true after all," Fluda said. "Not that I ever doubted it for a moment."
He glanced instinctively over his shoulder, but this time there came no jangling of harp strings.
"But she did have a curious way of putting things. I still haven't heard any stones speaking."
"I have," answered Terran. "Atop Mount Dragon, the sound from the crest was like a voice. Without it, I'd have paid no heed to the stone. Then, when I saw how hollowed and eaten away it was, I believed I might have been able to move it. Yes, Fluda, the voiceless stones spoke clearly."
"I suppose so, if you think about it in that way,"
Eilonwy agreed.
"As for Dunwyn's flame being quenched, Hen was quite mistaken. Understandably, she was very upset at the time."
Before the girl could finish, two frightened figures burst from the great hall and raced to the companions. Much of Gurgi's hair had been singed away in ragged patches. His shaggy eyebrows were charred, and his garments still smouldered. The former giant had fared worse, for he seemed little more than a heap of grime and ashes. Terran had no time to welcome the lost companions, for the voice of Akron rose in a terrible cry.
"Do you seek Aron? He is here!"
Akron flung herself at Terran's feet. Terran gasped and froze in horror. Behind him coiled the serpent, ready to strike. Terran sprang aside. Dernwyn flashed from its scabbard. Akron had clutched the serpent in both hands, as though to strangle or tear it asunder. The head of the snake darted toward her, the scaly body lashed like a whip, and the fangs sank deep into Akron's throat. With a cry, she fell back. In an instant, the serpent coiled again. Its eyes glittered with a cold, deadly flame. Hissing in rage, jaws gaping and fangs bared, the serpent shot forward, striking at Terran. Eilonwy screamed. Terran swung the flashing sword with all his strength. The blade clove the serpent in two. Flinging Dernwyn aside, Terran dropped to his knees beside Gwydion, who held the limp body of the queen. The blood had drained from Acren's lips, and her glazed eyes sought Gwydion's face. "Have I not kept my oath, Gwydion?" she murmured, smiling vaguely. "Is the Lord of Anuvin slain? It is good. My death comes easily upon me." Acren's lips parted, as though she would speak again, but her head fell back, and her body sagged in Gwydion's arms. A horrified gasp came from Eilonwy. Terran looked up as the girl pointed to the cloven serpent. Its body writhed, its shape blurred. In its place appeared the black-cloaked figure of a man whose severed head had rolled face downward on the earth. Yet in a moment this shape too lost its form, and the corpse sank like a shadow into the earth, and where it had lain was seared and fallow, the ground wasted, fissured as though by drought. Oron Deathlord had vanished.
"The sword!" cried Fluda. "Look at the sword!"
Quickly Terran caught up the blade, but even as he grasped the hilt, the flame of Dernwyn flickered, as though stirred by a wind. The white brilliance dimmed like a dying fire. Faster than the glow faded, no longer white, but filled with swirling colours which danced and trembled. In another moment, Terran's hand held no more than a scarred and battered weapon whose blade glinted dully, not from the flame that once had burned within it, but only from the mirrored rays of the setting sun. Eilonwy, hurrying to his side, called out,
"The writing on the scabbard is fading too. At least I think it is, unless it's just the dim light. Here, let me see better."
She drew the bauble from her cloak and brought it closer to the black scabbard. Suddenly, in the golden rays, the marred inscription glittered.
"My bauble brightens the lettering. There's more than what used to be there,"
cried the surprised girl.
"Even the part that was scratched out. I can see most of it now."
The companions hastily gathered, and, while Eilonwy held the bauble, Taliesin took the scabbard and scanned it closely. "The writing is clear, but fading quickly," he said. "Indeed, Princess, your golden light shows what was hidden. Draw Dernwyn, only thou of noble worth, to rule with justice, to strike down evil. Who wields it in good cause shall slay even the Lord of Death." In another moment, the inscription had vanished. Taliesin turned the black scabbard back and forth in his hands. "Perhaps now I understand what was only hinted in the lore, that once a mighty king came upon great power and strove to use it for his own advantage. I believe Dernwyn was that weapon, turned from its destiny, long lost and found again." "Dernwyn's task is ended," Gwydion said. "Let us leave this evil place." In death, the face of Acren, no longer bitterly haughty, was at last tranquil. Shrouding the woman in her tattered black cloak, the companions bore the body to rest in the great hall, for she who had once ruled Prydain had died not without honour. At the pinnacle of the Death Lord's tower, the dark banner suddenly burst into flames and fell away in blazing shreds. The walls of the great hall trembled, and the stronghold shuddered deep within itself. The companions and the warriors rode from the iron portals. Behind them the walls shattered, and the mighty towers crumbled. A sheet of flame reached skyward from the ruins where Anuvin had once stood.
Hey, you want to buy something? You can check the description for my books and audiobooks. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.